Thank you. Oh, thank you very much for coming up. Thank you, Manu. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Adeola. Adeola, unfortunately, she's stuck in Cardiff. I'm sorry. North Wales is much better, I know, but hey, because of the train strike. So she couldn't join us physically, but she's here on video. So she's happy to have you here, Adeola. My name is Alfredo Camerotti. I'm director here of Mostin. And Manu, Paul, and Adeola are three of the artists who are part of the Temporary Atlas exhibition, which we are launching today. And specifically, there are three kind of Wales-based artists, let's say, and that's why we invited here actually to have this conversation. The exhibition, to give you an overview very, very, very briefly, it's about the idea of mapping, not applied to the territory, but to apply to the self in a way, and the way we project ourselves to the outer world, and the way other people read us as well, which is as important as. And the exhibition started, well, the conception of the exhibition started a couple of years ago, which was in the middle of the pandemic, more or less, on an invitation of the Fondazione Imago Mundi in Treviso and the Fondazione Benetton Studi e Ricerche, because they launched basically a new exhibition space, not a new, but the new international program of the exhibition space in Treviso. They invited me to put together some sort of a group show that would make sense for their sort of a location and their background and their agenda. And then I started to think about how during the pandemic, every one of us really kind of re-evaluate a number of things, reassess what were our priorities and the importance we gave to certain things and the importance we took away from other things. So kind of a recentering in a way. And that's the idea of mapping came through. And then while I was working on that one, I realized that actually this exhibition was very much about also Mostin as a venue, as a location, and as an institution. So basically, we co-produced the exhibition together with the two other foundations, and this is the UK premiere. There are actually in Treviso there were 14 artists. Here we have 17 artists, and. The conversation today is really about talking about the artist's work more than the exhibition as such, and we invited actually Adeola, Manon, and Paul to kind of share with us what is their sort of a take on the exhibition through the work, and I think it's always important and sort of helpful to have the voice of the artist, the direct voice of the artist, rather than mediated through a curator or someone else. And that's actually we thought actually that launching the exhibition today would be nice to have this sort of a gathering, this catch up, let's say. So who wants to kind of start first? I mean, my first question. No, Adeola. No. my first question would be what's the idea behind the work you presented here? Man, go for it.
Okay. So first, maybe I say which works they are for the crew that's here. So I have two pieces: the large mirror leaning against the wall with the climbing holds that are made from. They're 3D printed from recycled fishing nets taken out of the sea. And the stone next to it with the inflatable beach ball. And the stone is an Anglesey limestone from
It's an extra stone. It's really heavy.
Yeah.
It's not a resin. It's actually a stone.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an Anglesey limestone, and it's actually part of the same stratum as the Great Orme, so it connects directly to the exhibition venue as well. And I guess in my work I very often connect geology to biography or geology to human connections with landscape and to place. And I was just kind of thinking about Llandudno as a location. It's quite similar to where I grew up. So I grew up on Anglesey near Rhosneigr, which is a very touristy village. I went to a local Welsh school, and most of the year it was really quiet and nothing going on at all. But obviously during the summer holidays, we had a lot of visitors then coming to their second homes and using the beaches and bringing along all of the material baggage that's connected to holiday mode. Yay, let's have fun and let's bring our umbrellas for the beach and the beach balls and the picnics and the disposable barbecues and all of that stuff that you connect with leisure and relaxing. And obviously, well, these materials leave their mark on the landscape in more than one way. It's connected to language, it's connected to longevity of materials, and it's not just about a kind of beach clean that has to happen once the holidays are over. It's about, the durability of those materials and how they not only physically become part of the landscape, but also kind of metaphorically, they shape the identity of these landscapes too, particularly on the coast, I feel. So, that's the kind of backstory of the pieces. And they were pieces that I've been developing in any case, but I thought they were particularly suited to the themes of the exhibition. And somehow, how could I map? How do I map myself in an object that's also kind of engaging and playful, but have deeper undertones to them?
There is a bit of a tension between the nature and culture in your pieces as well. This idea of human-made type of things and what is there before human and will be after humans as well.
Yeah,
which I thought it was actually quite interesting and kind of a focus on this idea of mapping the individual in relation to a whole somehow, as a universal whole thing.
Yeah, and in terms of kind of a more personal narrative as well. So I've always been obsessed with stones. I think it's all my family were from the slate quarrying area, and my grandfather was a stonemason. So when I was a little girl in Llanrug, close to Caernarfon, I used to go with him to the workshop, and he used to show me how to engrave the surface of these gravestones, and also cutting holes to make the flower pots. So this kind of holding and transforming stones has been a large part of my upbringing, I think. And also close to where I grew up, there were lots of Neolithic monuments too. So we used to go and play and climb these stones.
The Neolithic.
Yeah, climbing the Neolithic stones, before Cadw then put all the warning signs up.
So ring fence all the area.
Yeah. So
cool.
yeah.
Very good. Paul, what's can you tell me, because you have also two pieces.
Yeah. Where to start, really? So I think my relationship really to Welsh language and kind of thinking about adoption and in terms of like adopting a culture or a language through learning the language from a very early age, from the age of 3, and then going through a school system where you do your GCSEs and A-levels, and it's part of your life and part of your identity, but it feels like you're not given the tools potentially to how do you use it in a real life situation. Like, yes, you can have a conversation, yes, you can talk to people fluently, but there's something missing. There's an idea of this idea that I've been having recently of tethering. You're tethered to the language through education, but you're not tethered to the land. You're not tethered to the people, the history of the people, because your family don't speak the language. So I think Dyfoddiaeth, which is the film, which is the main work, and then there's a tapestry with the same name, Dyfoddiaeth, all came around thinking about what's my relationship to to Wales and the language, but also how does Wales see itself within the context of the British Isles and the rest of Europe. So interestingly, you talk about maps talking about Llandudno and you know, I was thinking about this kind of like either a west or an eastern outlook, that sometimes Wales is a western facing country. It looks out towards America, and it might see itself as being on the edge, a periphery of the rest of Europe. But I was thinking about, in terms of, you know, the legacy or the remnants of cultural language of Celtic, it seems to be like the last, you know, like a central, you know, so you think about Wales as being centre to the rest of the United Kingdom. It's the centre of, it's in between Ireland, in between England, in between Scotland and the Isle of Man and other places that have a legacy of Celtic language, like Cornwall and Breton. So within that context, I wanted to try to make a piece of work that looked at something similar that you were just talking about, stone. You know, you think of stratification as something that you can see and touch and be able to read to discover something. And I was thinking about, well, what would happen if I use language in a similar mode? You know, think about not contemporary Welsh, think about a projected future Welsh, or maybe even a past Welsh, which is more kind of in kin to like Brythonic, that would have been closer to Cornish and Breton, which would be P Celtic, and then you've got Q Celtic, which is the Irish branch, which is also Scottish as well, and how those all interrelate. So Wales becomes less about a periphery and more a centre of dialogue between other nations. So in the film, you know, just to think about, sorry, maybe it's too much.
You're talking about the geology of language.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And how you kind of try to sort of, I would say, excavate yourself.
Yeah,
through
within
this
that,
geology.
how do you fit in? How do you have a, how does it make sense to you? And ownership, you know, and a lot of the language in it is not just about contemporary words, but about archaic words, archaic spelling, archaic pronunciations, and looking at close cousins to the Welsh language to say, like, actually there are similarities, rather than Wales and Welsh language being isolated as a anomaly. It's actually interconnected, and you know, with other European languages. But I was also thinking about the kind of idea of like stratification, but also kind of how do you talk to a past and a present, a past and a present and a future, so that it's all about projecting to an imagined future. So the idea of singing, or that you were actually, the same way that when the radio was first invented and you're projecting out into the landscape, there is no boundaries, there are no it can just keep on going into the cosmos until somebody picks up that radio wave. So I was thinking about those things, and just to kind of a context about the word dyfodiaeth, it's a portmanteau of a couple of words really, dyfodol meaning future, iaith meaning language. But when you get rid of the OL after dyfodol, so it just becomes dyfod. Dyfod also means kind of like an idea of it's on its way, coming from somewhere else. So that was a coincidence really, but it made me think about, you know, something that has not yet, something that is coming from somewhere else. So those are the kind of like things that I was thinking about, and I think it
How
fits.
in the tapestry, for instance?
Yeah, the tapestry.
Because I remember I saw the tapestry in your studio.
Yeah.
What's that?
So I think, you know, I suppose the interconnection between European languages is that we all use, you know, like a Roman alphabet. And I was thinking about, you know, there's all these diacritics or accents on Welsh language that are not used in other languages. And I was thinking historically about things like, you know, when the Bible was translated into Welsh, and overnight the letter K vanished because they were using printing presses. that were from England, so there was more C's in the English language than there were K's, so very, very quickly language changes because of circumstances. So I was thinking about, well, how do you write? How do you write down language? And very short answer, the idea of writing, you know, not just left to right, but it's left to right and then right to left. But in that case, that piece of work, it's up, bottom, top, then top, bottom, then bottom, top, and so forth. So in Greek, there's a word called bostaphedon, which is ox turning, and sometime during kind of Greek inscriptions, you kind of see them for a short period of time written in that style, ox turning. So it's not just linear from left to right constantly, and then you go to the next sentence or the next, you kind of like following it almost like a snake, like a pattern. So I was trying to, you know, I suppose not reinvent writing, but trying to find my own way of writing that reflected my ideas about Welsh language and identity and my own relationship within that.
Very, very fascinating. Thank you. Adiola, what about your work, which actually is a brand new work, and I remember when you came to visit. I don't remember when it was, but anyway, some months ago, and you were kind of thinking what to do, etc., etc. You didn't really disclose much at that point, and I said, okay, I'll go away, and you know, I will let you know, and then ta-da. You made this kind of a two, which is one piece really. It's a kind of a diptych in a way. Can you tell us a bit more about the idea behind it? That.
Yeah. First of all, you know, I feel really privileged to be part of this and to be part of this conversation as well. So thank you. Amazing to meet Paul and Manon as well. I mean, meet you remotely. I still feel like I'm in Trinidad. I feel so far away, you know. But yeah, so I'm originally from Trinidad, and so for me, there's always this idea of location and dislocation, you know, and belonging and unbelonging, and negotiating that in many ways. And for me, this piece is something that originated with an experience I had in Haiti some years ago, and it's a thing that kind of stayed with me. And the more I kind of contemplate what happened at that time, the more I kind of think that some things may have been not necessarily fact. I don't know how you experience things that somehow become myth in a way. So there's that happened some years ago. And then I think over lockdown, certain things were simmering, and the things were very kind of personal. They are about essentially finding your voice as a mother, as a woman, as a foreigner in this space, you know, as all of those things. And it's about finding voice and visibility and all of those things. And the Haitian experience sort of allowed me to go through a process of understanding myself differently, I suppose, and reclaiming aspects that had been submerged, allowing for visibility. And in many ways that reflects the carnival for me. So I'm from Trinidad, as I said, and carnival is sort of that empowering space that allows you to dress up, to mask, but in doing that, allowing you to reveal aspects of yourself that, you know, you may have submerged, you know, in everyday life. So it's that kind of like masking to reveal. And in a way, that's what I'm trying to kind of approach this painting, this work in that way. There's a kind of a layering of self, and then a revelation of it as well, you know? I'm sounding really, I know.
No, it's interesting because when I was doing the kind of a walkthrough with the team yesterday, I mentioned something about your work, which is, you know, that's my reading of your work. It's not necessarily something that you told me. And it was that you're very, you know, kind of forward and center in your work as a person, but at the same time, you're not. So there is Adiola in all your work, really, from performances to the work, to photography, whatever. But at the same time, you're not there. because you're kind of you're escape to a plane which, you know, it transcends you as a person. And it's interesting that you mentioned this thing, actually, because that was my reading, at least.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, yeah, very, very accurate. Yeah, there is always that visibility, invisibility, and transformation as well. Transformation through masking, and so I'm kind of like playing with those tropes.
And this figure of kind of a warrior goddess, for instance, that's the kind of the reading, but also there is this kind of a symbology about that kind of a heart, love heart. Yeah, I was curious about that, actually.
Oh dear. Okay, yeah. So she is kind of an ode to a Haitian deity called Erzuli Dantor, Dantor, Dantor. She's very much responsible in many ways or she's connected to ideas behind the Haitian Revolution. She's a very strong character. Her energy is all about, protecting children. So she's a fierce lover and a fierce warrior as well. So there's love and there's war within her, as there would be for many mothers. She looks after children, but she also looks after single parents and women generally. So, there's this kind of energy that I was trying to kind of like channel with this one. The imagery of the heart is something called a veve. Oh my God, I seem so esoteric now, but it's a veve, right? And the veve in the Haitian culture is the drawing of whatever energy. So each energy, whether it's to the sea or to the snake or to the trees or to the land, each energy has a drawing. And I'm fascinated by that idea of like drawing energy, the symbology of that. And that heart is hers, the heart with the sword is her veve. But I wanted the veve to only be made whole through the performance, and the performance was photographed, so only through the wearing of the costume and the holding of the sword, her veve is complete,
But also because you created a diptych, you have to complete it even on a sort of a planar sort of a dimension in a way.
Yeah. What does it look like? I haven't seen it.
I'll show you later.
It looks fantastic.
Looks great. Cool. I just actually take this hint. I wanted to ask Manon, you train as an architect originally, and you work a lot with sort of landscape, as you mentioned, inner and outer landscape in a way, but also as a kind of in relation to space quite a lot. How do you position yourself in relation to the viewer as an artist? Do you have kind of the idea of the viewer in mind, or how? I'm just curious about it, actually, your relation with, because when you create a work, you put it out there, it's going to encounter some sort of a viewership. How do you feel about it? What's your thought process?
Yeah, the viewer is really important to me, and because the works are often have an element of performance in them. So I like the materials that perform in a certain way. So for example, the rock with the inflatable beach ball. I saw a little boy running in earlier, maybe. No, he's not here now. But he ran to the ball because he wanted to touch it, and his mother held him back. But that's perfect because I want that kind of engagement with the works. And the mirror piece as well, obviously it's a mirror so the audience see themselves in relation to the pieces, and the climbing holds are a kind of invitation to touch, to grab on, but climbing is impossible on the mirror because it's so fragile. So there's this kind of tension. Am I supposed to touch? What am I supposed to do? And I think, I'm sure the architecture training gave me a strong sense of kind of who's the participant, who you're making for, kind of forming relationships between a site and the audience and materials, and that kind of comes in through my work quite naturally.
Yeah. So you have this idea of the relationship in mind all the time when you're working and you produce pieces or you think about something? I mean,
Yeah, I think by now it's almost just an instinct that performativity is kind of intrinsically part of the work. But I wouldn't want to make a piece that has no engagement with the viewer. So a lot of the works you have to kind of move around or perform almost as an audience
rather than just contemplate.
Yeah.
What about you, Paul? Your relation with the viewer? It goes through the language to some extent, but not only.
I think I wanted to be accepted. I think the idea of making the work was overcoming some type of fear or some type of animosity or a losing of cultural identity. That you're part of a family in school. Everybody speaks Welsh around you, and then somehow you graduate and then you just lose all that. And I think talking to other Welsh language speakers, they didn't understand it. They were like, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about," and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's difficult." And I met somebody, and she said to me, "Oh, she retired," and it must have been 68, 65. She retired from the Welsh language school and in Wrexham. And she's like, "I've lost everything now. I might speak Welsh with my husband, but I don't have that connection that I did have every day, seeing many, many faces, many, many people." So I kind of think it was this, very naive way of going, right, I will do these things because I want to have a greater connection. But I think that was a huge failure. I think I just didn't, and the idea of understanding and not understanding, I was kind of thinking, right, well, what happens when in Wales you've got these projects that are in Welsh language or in English? There's never like an in-between unless you merge them languages together. So I was thinking, well, what if I subvert the language so much that a fluent Welsh speaker who knows academically and just every day knows the language inside and out, and make them feel uneasy, make them feel like what's being said, I understand, oh no, I've missed that. So I think it was about, trying to have, trying to play with some of those notions.
But it's not really about wanting to be accepted in a way. It's almost trying to sort of put a spin on.
That's it. But I think at first, naively, I thought that I was looking for acceptance.
But you're not.
But I'm not. No, I think it took me a long time. It's only recently that I started thinking that I need my own ownership on it, and that actually that this is what I want to do. This is what I want to make, and this is my language just as much as anybody else's. But I have to do it on my own terms. But that took me 5 years. I was thinking the first time that we met at the Nova Prize, and there was definitely an element of wanting to be accepted within the community.
Which you won, by the way.
I did. I did. It's a difficult one because But I think now I feel more. Like I feel in a position I've accepted it myself, like, right, I have this thing and I can do it whatever way I want. I don't have to be a mirror image of the rest of society. I can be my own person. Mm-hmm. So that took a long time.
Adiola, I think it's. I'm curious about your relation with the viewer, with the people who actually experience your work or receive your work in a certain way. I'm not talking only about the two-dimensional work, also through the performances as well, for instance, which are important in your practice.
Yeah, I'm listening to Manon and Paul, and I'm like, I feel I connect to what you've both said so far. But for me, I think the audience or the notion of the audience for me has always been shifting and changing. I feel like the audience is never, like in my experience, has changed and shifted so much. It's not a homogenous kind of one way of thinking and feeling thing that exists. So when I was in Trinidad, I very much had this kind of understanding, this kind of unspoken connection to my work, I suppose. And then over here, when I just moved over, which was almost 20 years ago now, there was a lot of friction trying to fit, I suppose, just trying to fit, in that my work wasn't translating, you know. I was told a lot of things about my work being too colorful or hypersexual or loads of other things, and the politics of the Black female body and all of those things. And I think I got to the point similar to you, Paul, where I'm saying, well, I was also told that my work was 5 years behind because I'm from Trinidad, you know, so this kind of competing with myself, this Trinidadian self, with this new space that was European, that was Welsh, that was so many things that didn't feel like there was a connection, but I think there was a connection. So outside of academia, I feel when you begin to kind of make work from the inside out, whether it's performance or spoken word or painting, it can resonate with people anyway. You know, it doesn't have to be literally translated to make sense to people. And I feel that I've had to come to that point in my journey where I'm like, okay, it's inside out work, it's honest work. It's not made with an audience in mind, so to speak, but I trust that when it's out there, it resonates with someone, you know, that kind of thing.
Yes, thank you. Good. Just question. We never really talk about recently, but I'm curious about your next things. You mentioned earlier that you have an exhibition opening next week. But beside that, what's the trajectory, let's say? I mean, I would like to know both, you know, kind of a immediate or kind of a immediate future project, but also what you feel your direction.
Well, how much money are you offering in?
I still have a budget.
Shall I go first again?
Yes.
Yeah, so I have an exhibition opening a week Friday in Berlin. It's like this month, everything is crammed into 3 weeks. It's not usually like that. There's a lot of development and preparing and thinking.
That's good life.
Yeah. So I'll be showing new works, but in terms of kind of longer...
Sorry, what works are you showing? I'm curious.
Yeah, because the gallery, PSM Gallery in Berlin, she said, you can have the summer show, Manon. And I was like, okay, this is really cool actually, because I am at the moment making a lot of work with the theme of kind of leisure and tourism and all that material baggage, which I mentioned earlier. So I think my exhibition opens a week before Berlin disappears out of the city and just goes off to the countryside. And a lot of those materials are part of the exhibition. So deck chairs, stones, inflatables, sleeping bags, transformed into these different artworks. Yeah, so it's the connection between materials and landscapes. And I think more and more I would like to dissolve the boundary more in my artworks. Between the materials and the landscape. So how kind of sticky can the materials become, so you're not quite sure where the boundary is. This is my kind of thinking at the moment, and I'm not sure what the hell that looks like. And how you kind of, maybe it's possible to explore that in the landscape directly, in kind of site-specific.
Yeah. So outside the gallery sort of environment, let's say, or the dedicated space to art, like somewhere, but not specifically in an art environment.
And I think in Wales and in these coastal areas, and we have such kind of amazing sites to be responding to and to be exploring. I'm excited to see where that takes me. But then how do you translate that into a gallery setting? I have no idea. Are they just kind of elements or material samples or footage? I'm not quite sure.
You need a curator, probably.
Yeah. So
It's interesting, actually, this idea of dissolving the boundary between material and landscape. It's I can see your work actually going to that direction. What about you, Paul? Budget aside.
Yeah, I
An ideal world.
Yeah. I think my training in terms of going to art school and going to university, and then my father being a joiner and watching him make things, put me in a predicament where, when I graduated, I was looking for work, and I worked with all these different artists for nearly 10 years making their work, and I think now it feels like, right, what do I focus on? What are the things that I really want to make? Recently I just put together a solo show of drawings in Middlesbrough. I'll have a solo show in September at Gallery in Caernarfon, which are potentially new tapestry works. But I think it's kind of just containing some too much excitement about like that direction, this direction. Like, for example, several years ago, Manon bought some of my furniture that I made, and it's like research furniture. So it feels that sometimes it can overwhelm me with what I would like to do, but I think how can I just come, after a big project like the film and the tapestries, for example, the one thing that I've been making, maybe I should just explain that really briefly and it'll give you an insight. Like, when I went to the BSR to do a residency for the fellowship for 3 months, the British School at Rome, I made these rubbings, which were literal rubbings of monuments and inscriptions, and then I made, off the back of that, I started making my own imagined rubbings and fictional inscriptions. But I think at the time I thought it was a very easy thing to do, and I still think it's a very easy thing to do, but actually I'm more and more impressed with the idea that it actually has a tangibility, maybe in the same way that Manon talks about the landscape and place. Like, these artifacts, either fictional or real, they come from something. Literally, taking the paper, putting it on top of something, taking a rubbing, and then removing it. So the Middlesbrough show all played on this idea of spolia, which is broken pieces of antiquity. And where to go with that next, really, either sculptures or more tapestries. So those are the things I'm thinking about.
You're in the middle of a creative flow somehow. It's interesting. I mean, for what I am reading, is actually because you work with other artists actually doing things.
Yes. Yeah.
You probably started your career as taking a step back from materiality, and maybe that's why your animation and video and the language, which in a way is language, it can be very abstract in a way, very ephemeral.
Yeah.
It's sound, it's voice, but now you're kind of going back to say, okay, hold on a minute, there is something that I want actually to explore in terms of materiality as well.
Yeah. I think, I think maybe it can be quite detrimental working for big artists that have got show year after year, because you just see the factory process, and you're an integral part in that process of making. Maybe that's why I made the film, because you become more of a director or a producer.
Absolutely.
I like being on my own, solitary, making things, nobody around, nobody bothering me, but then I'm desperate for working with people and talking about ideas.
What about you, Diola? What's the future looks like? Immediate and remote.
Okay, so the immediate future. So I have a little billboard at Llantonum Grange in Cwmbran.
A little one. Doesn't look very little.
in Kuban. So that's happening, I think, soon. And then I'm working on a project with Lakuneg, the company Lakuneg, with 3 wonderful women for the National Museum, looking at reframing Picton and that project, so reimagining things in and around that time in Trinidad. So that's happening. And I'm thinking in the future, well, in the near future, my next kind of, the energy I want to focus on is an energy called Olokun. And this energy is sort of like the deep sea. And deep sea is very much connected to like mystery. It's obviously part of the transatlantic trade where a lot of, bodies are. It's the largest grave site. But also deep sea with riches, so there's richness, there's mystery, there's beauty, but there's also death, and all of that. So wanting to explore Olokun, and I think I found the right person to feature as part of that. So I'm interested in kind of like trying to make this skirt, make this apron, and what it would look like, what elements will be attached to it, and having a kind of like interactive conversation with the person I want to photograph as part of that. So that's kind of like my very next project.
Yeah.
But in the future, I don't know. I think I just want to play, I want to kind of have fun with the work and have the privilege of play. Because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I want to give this more time,
Yeah.
and just kind of see what happens. The sky is the limit, right?
Great. Yes. We like it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Adeola. Thank you, Manon, and thank you, Paul. Thank you.